Hi, I'm Kath from Veg Patch Kitchen Cookery School, and today I want to show you my recipe for Shropshire Butter Buns. Now this is one I've been wanting to share with you for a long while. It's one of my all-time favourite bread-based recipes. So when I was at college, there was a bakery nearby that sold butter buns. The bakery's name was actually Sidoli's, or as the Italians would say, which I've learned since, Sidoli's, but we always called it Sidoli's. And it was nearby my college in Wellington in Shropshire in the UK. And every lunchtime, I would go and buy a butter bun. Every lunchtime. And they are absolutely beautiful. So they are basically a sweet dough, and in the middle they have a butter and sugar filling. And the dough is folded over the butter and sugar filling, and that leaks out as it bakes, and they just become really beautifully soft and buttery inside with this gorgeous treacly toffee base. And then Sidoli's shut, and they now just supply ice cream as a wholesale. And it was a really sad day. And I used to literally dream about these butter buns, and I'm not joking, I did used to dream about them. And when I started my food blog, The Ordinary Cook, in 2009, it kept niggling in the back of my head that I should make butter buns. But I had no idea how to go about it, and it just kept sort of me thinking, well, you know, how do they create that shape? What's the filling? Then in 2015, somebody wrote to me and said, do you have the recipe for Shrewsbury butter buns? And it never really occurred to me that they were a local speciality, that they were something that was specific to Shropshire. This really piqued my interest because I thought, right, I really need to learn how to make these. And actually, you can still buy them. You can buy them from Hignet's, and you can buy them, which is another local bakery, well, a bakery in Shropshire, and you can buy them from the Ludlow Food Centre, and Shrewsbury Market Hall has them available too. So you can still buy them. I just didn't know that at the time. So I searched on the internet, couldn't find a recipe, but I did find something which showed me how to shape them, which was a real revelation because it was that cracked it for me. And then I sort of had a sweet dough recipe that I had already got in, you know, for my sweet dough course. So I used my sweet dough recipe, and then I made up a filling. Basically equal amounts of butter and sugar with a little bit of vanilla extract in there. And that's what I've been showing people to make on my course for those, my sweet dough courses for the past 5 years. And they are delicious, and everybody loves them. Lots of people come and they've never heard of butter buns, particularly if they're not born and bred in Shropshire. And so this is a real revelation to them, and then they get the treacly bits in the bottom of the tray and they're converted completely. But this week I had an email from a chap called Edward Aston. And he'd seen my recipe on my food blog, The Ordinary Cook. Now that recipe for butter buns is my most commented on recipe and my most viewed recipe on all of my blog. It's a really popular recipe because I don't think there's another recipe out there on the internet for this particular butter bun. So Edward got in touch with me, and he said that 70 years ago, he apprenticed with Tom Wedge, which Tom Wedge had a bakery in sort of next town along from here, because I'm based in Ironbridge, and Tom Wedge had a bakery in Broseley. And 70 years ago, Edward apprenticed for this baker. He said he was a brilliant baker, and he was the son-in-law of Mr. Rhodes, who had a bakery in Market Drayton, and that is where Edward thinks the butter bun recipe came from. Rhodes Bakery in Market Drayton, spread to Sidoli's and other bakeries in the Shropshire area. So Edward very kindly shared the recipe with me this week because he's most concerned that it might disappear, and we will never know what that actual original recipe was. So There is my recipe that I sort of came up with in 2015, which I thought was a really close approximation of the butter buns that I used to buy and eat from Sidoli's in Wellington. But Edward's put me right, and then what he says is the filling is slightly different. So the method, the dough is all the same, and I've just got the filling a little bit different and how they're constructed and put together at the end. So the construction, my original construction is exactly the same, where I roll them out into a circle, put some butter and sugar filling, fold it over, more butter and sugar filling, and fold it over so it ends up with a triangle. But what Edward says is those triangles, buns, are then placed in a circle, and you used to buy 4 butter buns at a time in the circle. So we're going to do that today. I'm going to show you how to make it. And the filling, which I always sort of have shown people, is equal amounts of butter and equal amounts of sugar with some vanilla extract. Edward says actually what it is equal amounts of butter, equal amounts of light brown sugar, and I've always used caster sugar in the past. And then you add 20% of that total weight lemon curd. So I made some lemon curd yesterday because homemade lemon curd is much nicer than bought lemon curd, but do feel free to buy lemon curd if you don't want to make it. And then I have creamed together the butter and the sugar, and then added in the lemon curd and stirred it through, so that I've got this lovely, beautiful, creamy consistency that's going to make up the butter buns. So we'll get started. I'll show you how to make a Shropshire butter bun according to Edward Aston's recipe. Okay, so in this bowl I've got my sweet dough recipe. The recipe for this is below this video. Okay, and I'm just going to cut it out onto my work surface. It's been mixed, it's been stretched and folded, which is my favourite way of developing dough, and then left to ferment, and it's lovely and nice and risen. And then I've just done a stretch and fold about half an hour ago, which is why it's nice and tight now. So I'm going to make 8 large butter buns with this. So I'm going to cut it in half first, cut it in half again. Now you could make 12 smaller ones. I just like to be generous. Make 8 pieces. And then with each piece, I'm just going to form it into a ball and then roll it out. Okay, when you roll out dough, there's lots of gluten in this dough because it's been developed to have gluten in it so that it holds a beautiful structure when it's baked. And when you roll it out, it just wants to pull back all the time. So the best thing to do is, if you're finding it do that, just let it rest, even just for a few seconds, and then try and roll it again. Okay, and that will just improve. It will let the gluten relax and you'll be able to roll it out better. Okay, so I'm going to make a circle. I'm going to get my equal amount of sugar, butter and lemon curd mixture, and I'm going to pop about a teaspoon of that into the middle of there. Fold that over and repeat. Okay. So that you end up with a triangle of dough. Oh, the lemony smell is beautiful. So in this, I've got 150 grams of unsalted butter and 150 grams of light soft brown sugar and 60 grams of lemon curd. And what happens is this melts through the dough. Some of it stays inside and makes the dough beautifully moist, delicious and tasty. and some of it escapes. And actually the first time I made butter buns, and all of, well, not all, but a lot of the butter escaped. And I was really disappointed. I thought, oh no, I failed. This experiment has not worked. So the next time I made it, I sealed them really, really well with a little bit of milk around the edge. And actually, I realised that part of the beauty of a butter bun is that some of this mixture does escape. And what you end up with is a gorgeous tray full of treacly toffee. And it really is beautiful. And that's with caster sugar, because I normally make this with caster sugar. So I can only imagine what it's going to be like when it's made with light brown sugar. And then on the tray, we put them together like this. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a tray and we pop them on there. Leave enough space, bearing in mind now that these are going to grow and we want them to be able to grow together and have a batch bake. And Edward tells me that's how they were sold in this beautiful circle then of 4 butter buns. That's how you bought them. So I'm going to cover them up and I'm going to leave them to prove. So they're going to prove now for as long as it takes them to get beautifully risen and airy again, and I will show you what that looks like when those are proved. Okay, so the butter buns have had probably about an hour proving because it's a really cool day here and my kitchen is cold, so it's taken a bit longer than it normally would in a warm room. Anything between half an hour to a couple of hours depending on the temperature. And what you could also do is once you've shaped them, pop them in the fridge, leave them for several hours and forget about them, then bring them out and they will have proved slowly in the fridge. So they've risen by about 50% since I shaped them, and now they're going to go into the oven. Okay, and they're going to bake for 20-25 minutes at 200 degrees centigrade. So the butter bun has come out the oven and it's been out a couple of minutes. I have brushed it with really generously with the simple sugar syrup. So you can see it's got that beautiful glaze. And what I do, can you see all these lovely toffee bits? I leave them on the tray just to suck some of that butter back up as they're cooling, but also to allow that to set on the bottom of the buns. And then sort of 10 minutes, 15 minutes after they've been at the oven, I then put them to cool fully onto a wire rack. If you take them straight off as you fetch them out of the oven, you lose that loveliness on the bottom. And also, it doesn't give it a chance to reabsorb some of the butter that's melted out during the bake. And it does actually suck up quite a bit of that whilst it cools. I did one without baking parchment on the tray, and then one to show you a little bit more clearly how much of that toffee stuff there actually is. Baking parchment certainly makes the tray easier to wash afterwards. So a quick tip there is to use baking parchment underneath and then it catches all those treacly bits.